I remember that night like a scar burned into my memory. Cold wind scraping across the empty road, the sky heavy with rain that hadn't yet fallen. I was driving home from the night shift, headlights cutting through the darkness, my little boy asleep in the backseat, his head tilted against the window, soft snores mixing with the low hum of the engine. I was tired. Bone tired. The kind of exhaustion that lives under your skin when you've been holding your world together with both hands for too long. Being a single dad wasn't something I planned. It was something life demanded of me. After my wife passed, the word, enough, stopped having meaning. Enough sleep, enough money, enough time, none of it existed anymore. There was just doing what needed to be done. The road was empty except for me. Empty like my thoughts, until I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. A figure standing by the roadside, drenched in moonlight, her dress torn, her arms wrapped around herself against the wind. I slowed down. My instincts wrestled with reason. It was almost midnight. I had my son in the car. The world isn't kind anymore, we all know that. But something in the way she stood there, shaking, barefoot on the asphalt, made me pull over. Stay here, buddy, I whispered to my boy, tucking the blanket tighter around him. He didn't stir. I stepped out into the night. The wind hit like a slap, carrying the smell of rain and diesel. Miss, are you all right? She turned slowly. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and dirt, her hair tangled like she'd been running. The torn dress, once something expensive, I could tell even in the dark, hung off her shoulder. Please, she said, her voice trembling, my phone, it's gone. I just need to get somewhere safe. I hesitated. My father's voice echoed in my head. You don't know what people are capable of. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, said, if it were your wife, if it were your daughter, wouldn't you want someone to stop? Get in, I said finally. I'll drive you somewhere safe. She nodded, relief washing over her face. When she climbed into the car, I caught a faint scent of perfume under the dirt and rain, something rich, expensive, almost out of place in my beat-up sedan. She sat silently, staring out the window, clutching her arms. My son stirred, opened his eyes just enough to see her, then drifted back to sleep. Rough night? I asked softly, trying to make conversation. She let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. You could say that. I didn't push. I just drove. The silence was thick. Every few minutes, I caught her glancing in the mirror, like she expected someone to be following us. Where do you want me to take you? I asked after a while. Downtown, she said quietly. The Evergreen Hotel. I blinked. The Evergreen. That was the kind of place I drove past on my way to fix pipes for people who could afford to live like the world couldn't touch them. The kind of place where valet attendants made more in tips than I did in a day. You sure? I asked, glancing at her torn dress. Yes, she whispered. Please. Just. Don't stop. I didn't. We drove through the dark streets until the glowing towers of downtown rose up ahead like glass mountains. The closer we got, the quieter she became. By the time I pulled up to the Evergreen, she looked different, not just scared, but composed, like she was trying to pull herself together before stepping into another world. I parked near the entrance. A doorman started walking toward the car, his eyes narrowing as he saw her. She reached into her lap and froze. I don't have my purse, she said softly. Don't worry about it, I told her. Just get inside, all right. She looked at me then. Really? Looked at me, and for a moment, the fear faded. Thank you, she whispered. You don't know what you've done for me tonight. I shrugged awkwardly. Anyone would have stopped. She smiled. A sad, knowing smile. No, they wouldn't have. She stepped out, bare feet touching the pavement like she belonged there after all. The doorman's eyes widened when he saw her face. Miss Layden, he gasped. We've been looking everywhere for you. Layden. The name hit me like a thunderclap. As in Layden Industries. As in one of the richest families in the state. She turned back once before going inside, our eyes meeting for just a heartbeat. Then the doors closed behind her, sealing her back into her world of glass and gold. I drove home in silence. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. Pipes still leaked, bills still waited, and my son still wanted cereal with extra sugar. I figured that was the end of it. Just one strange night, one act of kindness in a world too busy for kindness. But fate doesn't work like that. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find a man in a suit standing there, tall and sharp as a blade. "Mr. Harris?" he asked. "Yeah." He handed me an envelope. "Ms. Layden asked me to deliver this personally." Inside was a check. My knees almost gave out when I saw the number. More than I'd make in 5 years. Enough to pay every debt, fix the car, and finally breathe. I stared at it like it might disappear. "She wanted to thank you," the man said. "She said you saved her life." I stammered. "I didn't. I just gave her a ride." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's all it takes." But there was more. Behind the check was a note, handwritten in elegant script. "You stopped when no one else did. That night, I thought the world had forgotten me, that money could buy everything except kindness. You reminded me that humanity still exists. I owe you more than you know. A.L." I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that note. You see, when you spend years fighting to survive, counting every dollar, pretending you're strong when you're not, you start to believe the world doesn't notice people like you. That decency doesn't pay, that compassion is for those who can afford it. But that night proved something. Kindness doesn't vanish. It just hides in ordinary people, waiting for the right moment to shine. I didn't cash the check right away. I sat with it for days, wondering if accepting it would somehow cheapen what I did. But the truth was, it wasn't just a gift. It was a message. So I used part of it to start over, to build something for my son, something steady. I fixed up the old truck, paid off the debts, and enrolled in night classes to become a certified contractor. The rest, I saved. Months passed. Life got better. Not easier, but better. Then one afternoon, while picking my son up from school, I saw her again. She was standing near a black car, sunglasses on, elegant as ever, talking to someone on the phone. When she saw me, she froze. Then she smiled, and for a moment, she looked just like she had that night. Vulnerable, real. She walked over. "Mr. Harris," she said softly. "I hoped I'd run into you. I figured you were probably too busy running an empire to remember the guy with the old car," I joked. Her smile widened. "I remember everything about that night." She paused, then added, "You didn't just stop for me. You changed something in me. I realized I'd built my whole life on the wrong kind of wealth." I didn't know what to say. So I said what came to mind. "You don't owe me anything." She shook her head. "Maybe not. But I'd like to offer you something. Not money. A chance." She told me she'd started a foundation, one that partnered with local tradesmen to rebuild homes for struggling families. "I need someone honest, someone who knows what it means to fight for what matters. Someone like you." I didn't answer right away. My son tugged my sleeve. "Dad, who's the lady?" She knelt down to his level. "Just someone your dad helped once," she said with a smile. "And now, maybe, someone who can help him too." That's how it began. One act of compassion turned into a partnership. Unlikely, but real. I ran the operations side. She funded and advocated. We rebuilt homes, fixed roofs, repaired walls. But more than that, we rebuilt dignity. And along the way, something unexpected happened. We became friends. Real friends. The kind who saw each other's broken parts and didn't flinch. She never acted like the billionaire in the torn dress again. She was just Anna. One evening, after another long day on site, she stood beside me watching the sunset over the city. "Funny," she said quietly, "how one moment can change everything." "Yeah," I replied. "One choice. One stop on the side of the road." She looked at me then, her eyes soft. "You know, I thought I had everything. Money, influence, power. But that night, standing there alone, I realized how empty all of it was. You didn't see a billionaire. You saw a person. And maybe that's what saved me." I swallowed hard. "You saved me too, in your own way." She smiled. "Then I guess we're even." But we weren't. Because you can't measure what kindness gives back. Over the years, our project grew. Dozens of homes, hundreds of families. My son grew up seeing what compassion looks like when it's turned into action. And every time we handed over the keys to a rebuilt home, I'd think of that night, the wind, the torn dress, the choice to stop. You see, I didn't just stop for her. I stopped for myself. For the man I wanted to be. Life gives us moments, fleeting, fragile, where we get to decide who we are. Do we pass by, eyes forward, pretending not to see the person in pain? Or do we stop, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's scary, because something deep inside us whispers, this is what matters? I don't tell this story because I want credit. I tell it because I almost didn't stop. I almost kept driving. And if I had, none of this, not the second chance, not the foundation, not the lives we've changed, would exist. One choice. That's all it takes. It's easy to think our actions don't matter in a world this big. But every ripple starts with a single drop. Every miracle starts with an ordinary person deciding to do something small. That night, I was just a tired single dad, trying to make it home. And she was just a woman in a torn dress, lost and afraid. Neither of us knew that in stopping for her, I was really stopping for both of us, for the future we couldn't yet see. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Stop. When you see someone broken, stop. When the world tells you to look away, stop. When it feels like you have nothing left to give, stop. Because kindness doesn't ask what's convenient. It asks what's right. The world will tell you that power is money, status, control. But real power, the kind that changes lives, comes from empathy. From the courage to act when no one else does. Anna taught me that wealth isn't measured in what you own, but in what you give. And I taught her that hope doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it drives an old sedan with a sleeping child in the back. We saved each other that night. Not with money. Not with power. With something simpler. Humanity. And if a single dad with nothing left but a heart that still cared can change a billionaire's life, imagine what all of us could do if we just stopped long enough to see the people right in front of us. Pause. Deep breath. So yes, I remember that night. The cold, the fear, the torn dress. But more than that, I remember the moment she turned and looked at me with eyes that said, "You saw me." And that look, changed everything. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness isn't small at all. It's the thread that ties two broken lives together and weaves them into something stronger. That's what happened to us. A single dad, a woman in a torn dress, and a world that became a little bit kinder because one of us chose to stop.